The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the most beautiful place in the known universe. Giant crystals grew from the floor to the ceiling, each one glowing with soft light from distant stars. The air smelled clean and sweet, like flowers that had never grown on Earth. Beings from 100 different worlds had built this place over thousands of years, and it showed the power and wisdom of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood alone in the center of this magnificent room. She was a small woman with dark hair turning gray at the edges and eyes that had seen too much of both Earth and space. Around her, arranged in a great circle that rose up like a stadium, sat the representatives of the 12 elder races. These were the species that had ruled the galaxy since before humanity learned to make fire. Elena kept her face calm and professional, but inside her heart was beating fast. Humanity had only been part of the galactic community for 18 years. They called it 18 cycles here, but it meant the same thing. In that short time, humans had spread to 47 worlds, built 300 space stations, and made themselves impossible to ignore. The elder races had watched this expansion with growing concern. Now they had summoned humanity to answer for it. High Arbiter Keth Valen rose from his seat at the top of the chamber. He was ancient beyond human understanding, a being made of flowing tendrils that glowed blue and green in the dim light. His species, the Vorthani, had been traveling between stars when dinosaurs still walked the Earth. When he spoke, his voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Humanity," he said, and the word echoed through the crystal hall. "You have requested full membership in the Galactic Council. You wish to sit among the elder races as equals. You wish to have a voice in the decisions that shape the future of all life in this galaxy." Elena nodded. "That is correct, High Arbiter. Then you must understand what this means." Keth Valen's tendrils moved slowly, like grass in a gentle wind. "Every species that has ever joined this council has first completed what we call the proving. It is our oldest tradition. It is how we know if a species is ready to share in the responsibility of guiding galactic civilization." Elena had heard of the proving. Everyone had. But nobody outside the council knew exactly what it involved. The details were kept secret until the moment of challenge. "We are ready to hear the terms," Elena said. A different voice spoke now. This one belonged to Counselor Vormesh of the crystalline hegemony. His body was made of living stone, beautiful and terrible, with gems for eyes that reflected light in strange patterns. "The proving is different for each species. We study your people. We learn your strengths and weaknesses. Then we design a challenge that tests your very nature." "The Vorkai were tested on their telepathic endurance," said another counselor, a being that looked like smoke given solid form. "They had to maintain mental contact across impossible distances for 1 full year. The silicates proved their worth through technology," added Vormesh. "They were given a broken world and tasked with making it bloom again. Each test is fair," Keth Valen continued. "Each test is designed to push a species to its absolute limit. Many have failed. Those who fail are not destroyed or punished. They simply remain as observer species, never able to vote, never able to shape policy. They exist under our protection, but they do not lead." Elena felt the weight of every human life pressing down on her shoulders. This moment would decide humanity's future among the stars. "And, what test have you designed for us?" The chamber went quiet. Even the soft hum of the crystal lights seemed to fade. Keth Valen's tendrils stopped moving entirely. "We have watched your species carefully," he said. "We have studied your history, your biology, your culture. We have tried to understand what you are." He paused, and Elena got the feeling that what came next had been debated for a very long time. "Your species is unusual. You spread quickly. You adapt to new environments faster than any species we have recorded. You are creative and persistent. These are admirable qualities." "Thank you," Elena said carefully. However, the word hung in the air like a blade. "You are also remarkably fragile. Your bodies are soft. You have no natural armor, no claws worth mentioning, no venom or poison. You cannot regenerate lost limbs. You cannot survive in vacuum. Extreme heat kills you. Extreme cold kills you. You have no telepathy, no electromagnetic senses, no ability to perceive beyond a narrow band of light and sound." Vormesh leaned forward, his gem eyes glittering. "Your average lifespan is less than 1 century. That is nothing. Many of us in this chamber have lived for 10,000 years or more. Your individual lives are like sparks bright for a moment, then gone. You are, Keth Velon said slowly, by every metric we possess, unremarkable. You have no special gift that sets you apart. You have only your numbers and your stubbornness. Elena said nothing. She had learned long ago that sometimes silence was the best response. Therefore, Keth Velon continued, we have designed a test that will prove whether humanity deserves to stand among us, or whether you are simply another short-lived species reaching beyond your grasp. A hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a planet, but not like any planet Elena had ever seen. The surface was a nightmare of volcanoes, storms, and twisted landscapes. Even from the hologram, she could sense that this was a place of death. This is Crucible IX, Keth Velon said. It is what you would call a death world. The atmosphere is toxic to nearly all known life forms. The temperature swings from burning heat to freezing cold within hours. The native creatures are among the most dangerous predators ever documented. The terrain itself shifts and changes without warning. No member of any elder race has ever set foot on Crucible IX, Vormesh added. It is too dangerous. There is no point. We have machines and drones to study such places. Elena stared at the hologram, her mind already racing through possibilities. Your challenge is this, Keth Velon said. Humanity must send one individual to Crucible IX. Just one. This person must survive on the surface for one standard year. They must do this without technology, without weapons, without any outside contact or assistance. They must survive using only what your species was born with. The silence that followed was absolute. If your champion survives, Keth Velon continued, humanity will be granted full membership in the Galactic Council. If they die, or if they call for rescue before the year is complete, humanity will remain as observers forever. You will never have another chance. Elena understood now. The Council expected her to refuse. They expected humanity to realize that they were outmatched, to accept their place as a lesser species, to slink back to their little corner of the galaxy and be grateful for whatever scraps the elder races allowed them. She thought about human history. She thought about the ice ages and the famines. She thought about the plagues that had killed millions and the wars that had nearly ended everything. She thought about every disaster, every catastrophe, every impossible situation that her species had faced. And then she thought about how humanity was still here, still fighting, still reaching for the stars. Ambassador Elena Vasquez looked up at the assembled might of the Galactic Council, at beings who had ruled the universe since before humanity existed, and she smiled. We accept. The reaction was immediate. Shocked murmurs rippled through the chamber. Counselors turned to each other, their alien faces showing something that might have been surprise or confusion or perhaps even fear. Keth Velon's tendrils flickered rapidly. You understand what you are agreeing to? This is not a game. Your champion will almost certainly die. I understand, Elena said. Her voice was calm and steady. Humanity accepts the challenge of the proving. We will send our champion to Crucible IX, and they will survive. Not because we are strong, not because we are special, but because giving up is not something humans know how to do. She turned and walked out of the chamber, leaving the oldest civilizations in the galaxy to wonder what kind of species they had just unleashed upon themselves. The news spread across human space faster than any message had ever traveled before. Within hours of Ambassador Vasquez's acceptance, every human on every world knew about the proving. They knew about Crucible IX. They knew that one person would have to face the impossible, and that the future of their entire species depended on it. The selection committee was formed 3 days later. It met in Geneva, in the same building where humans had once tried to solve their own problems before they knew they were not alone in the universe. General Marcus Stone represented the military. Dr. Yuki Tanaka spoke for the scientific community. Politicians and philosophers and ordinary citizens all had their representatives at the table, and the applications started pouring in. In the first week alone, 2.3 million people volunteered to die on an alien world. Soldiers with decades of combat experience. Scientists with knowledge of every survival technique ever invented. Athletes who had pushed their bodies to the absolute limit of human ability. Wilderness experts who had lived alone in Earth's harshest environments. Every single one of them was willing to give their life for the chance to prove that humanity belonged among the stars. The debates were fierce and endless. General Stone pounded the table with his fist during one meeting. We need a warrior, someone who can fight, Someone who won't hesitate when a predator is trying to eat them alive. Dr. Tanaka shook her head. Combat skills won't help against an entire planet. We need a scientist. Someone who can analyze the environment, understand the biology, find solutions that a soldier would never think of. We need someone the public can believe in, said the politician from the European Union. Someone photogenic. Someone who can inspire people even as they're watching them struggle. What we need, said another voice quietly, is to stop thinking like the council expects us to think. Everyone turned to look at the speaker. Dr. Samuel Okonkwo was the oldest person on the committee. He had spent 50 years studying alien cultures, trying to understand how non-human minds worked. His hair was white. His hands shook slightly when he moved them, but his eyes were sharp and clear. What do you mean? General Stone asked. Dr. Okonkwo stood up slowly and walked to the window. Outside, the city of Geneva spread out beneath a gray sky, millions of people going about their lives, unaware that a few people in this room were deciding the fate of everyone. The council designed this test based on what they think we are, he said. They see us as fragile creatures who need tools to survive. They think that without our technology, without our weapons, we are nothing, just soft little animals who got lucky enough to figure out how to build spaceships. He turned back to face the committee. They're wrong. They've been watching us for 18 years, and they still don't understand the first thing about humanity. Then enlighten us, Dr. Tanaka said. What do they not understand? Dr. Okonkwo smiled. It was a tired smile. The smile of a man who had spent his whole life trying to explain something that should have been obvious. They don't understand that humans are not specialists. Every other species in the galaxy evolved to be perfect at one thing. The Vorkai developed telepathy. The silicates mastered technology. The crystalline hegemony became living stone. Each species found one great strength and built their entire civilization around it. He spread his hands. But humans? We're not good at any one thing. We're mediocre at everything. And that is our greatest gift. General Stone frowned. How is being mediocre a gift? Because it means we can do anything. Doctor, Okonkwo's voice grew stronger. We can run, but not as fast as a cheetah. We can swim, but not as well as a fish. We can climb, but not like a monkey. We can fight, but we're not as strong as a bear. Take any single ability, and there is an animal on Earth that does it better than we do. He paused, letting the words sink in. But here's the secret that the Council doesn't know. No other animal on Earth, no other species in the galaxy can do all of those things. And more importantly, no other species can learn. When we face something new, we don't die. We adapt. We change. We become whatever we need to become to survive. The room was silent. The Council is looking for a champion who can win, Dr. Okonkwo said. They want someone who is strong enough or smart enough or tough enough to beat Crucible IX. But that's not what we should be looking for. We should be looking for someone who can lose and keep going anyway. The selection process changed after that meeting. The committee stopped looking for the strongest or the smartest. Instead, they looked for something harder to measure. They looked for the person who would never, ever give up. They found Maya Chen. She was 34 years old. A nurse from Vancouver who worked in the emergency room of one of the busiest hospitals in North America. She was not famous. She was not remarkable in any way that would show up on a standard evaluation. Her test scores were good but not exceptional. Her physical fitness was above average but not outstanding. But her story was something else entirely. Maya had grown up on her grandmother's small farm in rural China, in a village so remote that the nearest hospital was 60 kilometers away. When she was 12 years old, her grandmother had a stroke. There was no car. There was no phone signal. There was only Maya and a choice. She walked. Through rain and mud and darkness, she walked. When she got tired, she kept walking. When she fell, she got up and walked some more. 60 kilometers, alone, at 12 years old, to get help for someone she loved. Her grandmother survived. That was the kind of person Maya Chen was. She didn't know how to quit. As an adult, she had worked disaster relief on 3 continents. She had treated patients during earthquakes, floods, and epidemics. Once, when a blizzard trapped her team 40 kilometers from a village with sick children, she had walked through the storm alone to reach them. It took her 18 hours. She lost 2 toes to frostbite. She saved 11 lives. When the committee called her for the final interview, she came without any idea why she had been selected. She sat in a plain chair in a plain room, facing a row of very serious people who were about to ask her to die for humanity. "Do you know why you're here?" General Stone asked. Maya nodded. "The proving. You want someone to go to Crucible IX? We want to send you," Dr. Tanaka said. "If you're willing." Maya was quiet for a long moment. She thought about the alien world, about the toxic air and the deadly creatures and the impossible odds. She thought about the millions of people who had volunteered, many of them far more qualified than her. "Why me?" she asked finally. Dr. Okonkwo leaned forward. "Because we've read your file, Miss Chen. We've studied your history, and we believe that you have something that cannot be taught or trained. You have the ability to face the impossible and refuse to accept defeat. The Council expects us to send our best warrior or our greatest genius," General Stone added. "They expect someone who will try to conquer Crucible IX through strength or intelligence. But that's not how humans survive. We survive by being too stubborn to know when we're beaten." Maya looked at each of them in turn. She understood now. They weren't asking her to win. They were asking her to endure, to suffer, to face death again and again and keep choosing to live. "When do I leave?" she asked. 3 months later, Maya Chen stood on a landing pad under an alien sky, wearing simple clothes and carrying nothing at all. The ship that would take her to Crucible IX waited behind her. Ahead of her, a crowd of humans had gathered to see her off: scientists, soldiers, politicians, and ordinary people who had come from across human space. She didn't give a speech. She wasn't that kind of person. She just nodded once, turned around, and walked onto the ship. The fate of humanity walked with her. The first breath nearly killed her. Maya stepped out of the landing pod onto the surface of Crucible IX, and the air hit her lungs like fire. It burned going in and burned going out. Her eyes watered. Her nose started bleeding. Every cell in her body screamed at her to get back in the pod, to call for rescue, to escape this horrible place before it destroyed her. She stayed. The pod lifted off behind her, leaving her completely alone on a world that wanted her dead. Above, hidden in the swirling clouds, Council drones watched her every move. The entire galaxy would see what happened next. Maya took another burning breath, then another. She started walking. The landscape around her was like nothing on Earth. The ground was made of dark rock that shifted and cracked under her feet. Strange plants grew in twisted shapes, their leaves the color of rust and blood. In the distance, mountains rose up like broken teeth against a yellow sky. Everything was wrong. Everything was alien. Everything was dangerous. By the end of the first day, Maya had found water. It wasn't clean water. Nothing on this planet was clean, but it was wet, and she was desperately thirsty. She drank it anyway, knowing it would make her sick. It did. She spent the night vomiting behind a rock, her body trying to reject the poison she had willingly swallowed. But the next morning, she was still alive. She drank more water. Her body started to adjust. The first week was the worst. Maya learned quickly that the temperature on Crucible IX changed without warning. 1 hour, the sun would beat down with terrible heat, making her sweat and gasp for breath. The next hour, cold winds would sweep down from the mountains, chilling her to the bone. She had no shelter, no fire, no way to regulate her temperature except to keep moving. She lost weight. Her skin cracked and bled. Infections started in cuts that she couldn't keep clean. Every morning, she woke up surprised that she was still alive. The Council watched with growing interest. In the Great Chamber on Nexus Prime, the elder races gathered to observe the human struggle. They had expected her to die quickly. Most had bet on less than 10 days. Instead, she kept going. "Her biological functions are in constant crisis," noted Counselor Thesic of the Vorkai, studying the medical data from the observation drones. "Her immune system is fighting multiple infections. Her lungs are damaged from the atmosphere. Her digestive system is struggling to process the local food sources. She should be dead," Vormesh agreed. "By any reasonable measure, she should have died on the 3rd day." High Arbiter Keth Valen said nothing. He simply watched. On the surface of Crucible IX, Maya was learning. Every day taught her something new. She learned which plants would make her less sick than others. She learned which rocks held heat and could keep her warm at night. She learned to read the sky and predict when the temperature would change. She learned to dig holes in the ground to escape the worst of the heat and the cold. By the 3rd week, she had built something that could almost be called a shelter. It wasn't much, just a pile of rocks and branches arranged to block the wind, but it was hers. She had made it with her bare hands on a world that had never known human touch. The predators found her on day 23. They were called Wraith Hunters by the Council scientists who had studied them from orbit. 6 legs, armored skin, jaws that could crush stone. They were the dominant predators on Crucible IX. Perfectly evolved killing machines that had never encountered anything they couldn't eat. The first one attacked at dawn, charging out of the rocks with terrible speed. Maya saw it coming just in time. She ran not fast enough to escape, but fast enough to reach a narrow crack in a cliff face, where the creature couldn't follow. It circled outside for hours, waiting for her to come out. She didn't come out. She stayed in that crack for 2 days, slowly dying of thirst, until the creature finally lost interest and moved on. When she emerged, she started planning. The next time a Wraith Hunter came for her, Maya was ready. She had spent a week preparing, gathering sharp rocks and finding the highest ground she could reach. When the creature charged, she climbed. When it tried to follow, she threw rocks at its eyes. When it retreated, she chased it, screaming and throwing more rocks. She didn't hurt it. She didn't need to. She just needed it to decide that she wasn't worth the trouble. It took 11 encounters before the Wraith Hunters learned to avoid her territory. Maya won 9 of those fights. If you could call driving off a predator without killing it a victory, she lost 2 of them badly, earning deep scars on her arms and legs that would never fully heal. But she survived. The Council was watching closely now. Something was happening that they had never seen before. She's not winning through strength, Keth Valen observed. She's not winning through intelligence or speed or any measurable advantage. Then how is she winning? Vormesh demanded. Keth Valen's tendrils flickered with an emotion that had no name in any language. She's not winning. She's simply refusing to lose. There is a difference. By the 3rd month, Maya Chen had done something unprecedented in the history of Crucible IX. She had established a territory. She had learned to find food and water consistently. She had driven off the local predators and built a shelter that could withstand the planet's violent weather. She had made fire actual fire, using techniques that the Council scientists had considered impossible in that atmosphere. The elder races had studied Crucible IX for 10,000 years with their advanced drones and sophisticated sensors. They had catalogs full of data about every rock, every plant, every creature on the surface. They knew everything about this world. But Maya Chen, with nothing but her bare hands and her stubborn refusal to die, had discovered 17 edible species that were not in any of their databases. She had found caves that their drones had never mapped. She had learned secrets about this planet that all their technology had missed. How is this possible? Thesic asked. We have surveyed this world thoroughly. Our sensors are far superior to human senses. Ambassador Vasquez, who had been permitted to watch the observation feed, smiled slightly. Your sensors look for what they expect to find. Maya looks for what she needs. Those are very different things. 6 months passed. Maya grew thinner, harder, more adapted to her hostile world. She had learned to breathe the toxic air without coughing. Her skin had toughened against the harsh sunlight. Her body had changed in ways that no human body had ever changed before, because no human had ever faced such pressures. She was becoming something new. Not superhuman, still fragile, still mortal, still just a woman alone on a death world. But somehow more than what she had been. The galaxy watched, and the galaxy wondered, what kind of species produces individuals like this? What kind of evolution creates beings who respond to impossible challenges, not by dying, but by adapting, by changing, by becoming whatever they need to become? The elder races had ruled the galaxy for 100,000 years. They had seen civilizations rise and fall. They had met species beyond counting, but they had never met anything quite like humanity, and they were beginning to understand that the universe might never be quite the same. On day 294, the planet tried one last time to kill Maya Chen. She had grown comfortable as anyone could be on a death world. Her shelter was strong. Her food stores were full. She knew every rock and every path in her territory. She had even made a kind of peace with one of the smaller Wraith Hunters, a young creature that had learned to accept her presence in exchange for scraps of food. She called it Shadow, though she knew she shouldn't name things she might have to eat someday. The morning started like any other. Maya woke at dawn, checked her water supply, and began her daily rounds to check her traps and gathering spots. The sky was its usual ugly yellow, and the air tasted like copper and ash. Everything seemed normal, then the ground started shaking. At first, Maya thought it was just a small tremor. Crucible IX had earthquakes all the time. The planet's core was unstable, constantly shifting and settling. She had lived through dozens of quakes in the past 10 months. They were dangerous but manageable. This was different. The shaking grew stronger. Cracks opened in the ground around her. In the distance, she heard a roar like 1,000 thunderstorms happening at once. She looked toward the mountains and saw them falling apart. The entire mountain range that bordered her territory was collapsing. Massive chunks of rock tumbled down the slopes, crushing everything in their path. Clouds of dust and debris shot up into the sky, blocking out the sun. The ground heaved and buckled beneath her feet. Maya ran. She ran faster than she had ever run before, faster than she thought her weakened body could manage. Behind her, her shelter disappeared under a wave of falling rock, her food stores, her tools, everything she had built over months of desperate struggle gone in seconds. The earthquake lasted for almost an hour. When it finally stopped, Maya found herself lying in a shallow valley she had never seen before. The landscape around her had been completely transformed. Nothing looked familiar. Nothing looked safe. She sat up slowly, testing her body for injuries. Her left arm was broken. She could feel the bone grinding against itself when she moved. Deep cuts covered her legs and back. She was bleeding from a gash on her forehead that kept dripping into her eyes. Everything she had worked for was gone. Her territory was buried under millions of tons of rock. Her shelter, her food, her carefully gathered supplies all destroyed. She was back to nothing, worse than nothing, because now she was injured and weak and the planet was more hostile than ever. Far above her, in the safety of the council chamber on Nexus Prime, the elder races watched in silence. Counselor Thesic of the Vorkai was the first to speak. It is over. There is no logical way for her to survive now. She will surrender. Any rational being would. Vormesh agreed. She has nothing. She is injured. The terrain has changed completely. Even if she wanted to continue, she would have to start from the beginning with a broken body. She will signal for extraction, another counselor said confidently. The rules permit honorable withdrawal. No one would blame her for accepting rescue under these circumstances. Kethvalen said nothing. His tendrils were completely still as he watched the observation feed. On the surface of Crucible IX, Maya Chen sat in the ruins of her world and thought about giving up. The signal device was still working. She could feel it in her pocket. A small piece of technology that the council had allowed her to keep, the only technology she was permitted. One press of a button, and a ship would come. One press, and she would be warm and safe and fed. One press, and all the pain would stop. She pulled the device out and looked at it. Her broken arm screamed with agony. Her wounds were already starting to get infected in the filthy air. She had no food, no water, no shelter, and no idea where she was. The odds of survival were essentially zero. Every logical part of her brain was telling her to press the button, but there was another part of her brain. A deeper part. The part that had made her walk 60 kilometers through the rain when she was 12 years old. The part that had carried her through a blizzard to save children she had never met. The part that had dragged her through 10 months of hell on an alien world. That part of her brain had something to say about giving up. Maya started to laugh. It was not a happy laugh. It was not a sane laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had been pushed beyond every reasonable limit and had discovered something impossible on the other side. She laughed until tears ran down her face, mixing with the blood from her wound. She laughed until her broken ribs ached and her damaged lungs burned. The council watched in confusion. What is she doing? Thesic demanded. Has she lost her sanity? Ambassador Vasquez, watching from her permitted position at the edge of the chamber, felt tears forming in her own eyes. She understood what the council did not. She understood what that laugh meant. She's not going to quit, Vasquez said softly. Kethvalen turned toward her. Explain. Her situation is hopeless. Continued resistance serves no logical purpose. Vasquez took a deep breath. You designed this test to show that humans are fragile. You wanted to prove that without our technology, we are nothing special. Just soft creatures who got lucky. She looked at the observation feed, at the small, broken woman sitting alone in the wreckage of everything she had built. But you don't understand what we are, Vasquez continued. We didn't evolve on a paradise world. We didn't develop in safety and comfort. We come from a planet that tried to kill us with ice ages, with plagues, with predators, with disasters. For 300,000 years, the Earth did everything it could to wipe us out. She turned to face the Council directly. And we're still here. Not because we're stronger than the things that tried to kill us. Not because we're smarter or faster or tougher. We're still here because when everything falls apart, we get back up. When the world breaks us, we put ourselves back together. When we lose everything, we start over. On the surface below, Maya Chen put the signal device back in her pocket. Then she used her good arm to push herself up onto her feet. The pain was incredible. Every part of her body was begging her to stop, to rest, to accept defeat. She started walking. One step, then another, then another. That's not rational, Vormesh said, his crystal eyes flickering with something that might have been awe. She gains nothing by continuing. The suffering serves no purpose. You're wrong, Vasquez said. The suffering is the purpose. Every step she takes, every breath she draws, every second she refuses to give up, that's what makes us human. That's what we are. Kethvalon's tendrils began to move slowly, rhythmically, in a pattern that the translators could not interpret. After a long moment, he spoke. I have lived for 12,000 years. I have seen species rise and fall. I have witnessed wonders and horrors beyond counting. His voice was different now, softer and strange. I have never seen anything like this. Maya Chen walked through the devastated landscape of Crucible Eye, leaving bloody footprints on the alien stone. She had 71 days left to survive. No shelter, no food, no tools, just a broken body and an unbreakable will. The galaxy watched, and the galaxy began to understand that it had underestimated humanity. On the 365th day, Maya Chen walked out of the wilderness of Crucible IX. She looked nothing like the woman who had arrived 1 year before. Her body was covered in scars, thin white lines, and thick purple welts that told the story of every battle, every fall, every close call with death. Her skin had darkened and toughened under the alien sun. Her hair, once long and black, had been cut short with a sharp rock, practical and uneven. She had lost 30 pounds, most of it muscle that her body had consumed to stay alive. But her eyes were different too. There was something in them that had not been there before. Something hard and bright and utterly unbreakable. The pickup ship descended through the yellow clouds, its engines screaming against the toxic atmosphere. Maya stood and watched it land, making no move toward safety until the door opened and a medical team rushed out to help her. She let them take her arm. She let them guide her into the ship. But she did not let them carry her. She walked on her own feet, just as she had walked every day for the past year. The ship lifted off from Crucible IX, and Maya Chen watched the death world shrink below her. Somewhere down there, Shadow was probably hunting in the ruins of her old territory. Somewhere down there, the plants she had cultivated were still growing in hidden corners. She had left marks on that planet, small changes that would last long after she was gone. It had tried to kill her 1,000 times, and she had survived. 2 days later, Maya stood in the crystal chamber of the Galactic Council. She was still weak, still healing, still carrying the weight of everything she had endured. The medical team had wanted her to rest longer, but she had refused. She had come this far. She was not going to wait any longer to face the beings who had challenged her species. The chamber was silent as she entered. The representatives of the 12 elder races looked down at her from their high seats, their alien faces unreadable. Some of them had watched her every moment on Crucible 9. Others had only heard reports. All of them were curious to see this strange creature who had done the impossible. High Arbiter Kethvalon rose from his seat. His tendrils glowed brighter than Maya remembered, shifting through colors that had no names in any human language. Maya Chen of Earth, he said, his voice filling the chamber. You have completed the proving. You have survived 1 standard year on Crucible IX without technology, without weapons, without assistance of any kind. By the ancient laws of this council, you have earned the right to speak. Maya nodded. She had known this moment was coming. She had thought about it during the long nights on the planet's surface, staring up at stars she could not name. She knew what she wanted to say. Before we proceed, Kethvalon continued, I must ask the ritual question. It is asked of every champion who completes the proving, and your answer will be recorded for all time. He paused, and the chamber grew even more silent. What have you learned, human, from your time in the Crucible? Maya looked up at the assembled might of galactic civilization. These beings had lived for thousands of years. They had mastered technologies that humanity could barely imagine. They had ruled the stars since before her species existed, and they had almost missed the point entirely. I learned, she said slowly, that you've been asking the wrong question for a very long time. A ripple of reaction passed through the chamber. Confusion, surprise, perhaps even anger. The ritual question had been asked for 100,000 years. No one had ever suggested that it was wrong. Explain, Kethvalan said. His voice was neutral, but his tendrils had stopped moving completely. Maya took a step forward. Her legs ached. Her broken arm, still healing, throbbed with pain, but her voice was steady. You test species on their weaknesses, she said. Every race that comes before this council faces a challenge designed to expose what they lack. The Vorkai were tested on telepathic endurance because you believed their minds were their weakness. The Silicates were tested on technology because you thought their dependence on machines made them vulnerable. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of beings that could destroy her with a thought. You tested humanity on survival because you believed we were fragile, weak, unremarkable. You thought that without our tools, we were nothing. And we were wrong? Kethvalan asked. Maya shook her head. No, you were right. We are fragile. We are weak. By every measure you possess, we are exactly as unremarkable as you believed. Silence. The council had expected her to argue, to defend her species. This admission of weakness confused them. But here's what you don't understand, Maya continued. Weakness isn't something to be overcome with strength. It's something to be understood. Every scar I carry taught me something your drones never could. Every failure brought me closer to success. Every time I was broken, I learned how to put myself back together in a new way. She raised her scarred hands, showing them to the council. On your death world, I died 100 times. The atmosphere killed me. The predators killed me. The cold and the heat and the poison and the earthquakes, they all killed me. And every time, I came back. Not because I was strong enough to survive, but because I was weak enough to change. Ambassador Vasquez, standing at the edge of the chamber, felt tears running down her face. She understood now what Dr. Okonkwo had seen in Maya's file all those months ago. Not strength, not intelligence, adaptability. The one trait that the elder races, with all their power and wisdom, had never truly valued. You wanted to know if humanity deserves a seat among the stars, Maya said. Here's your answer. We don't deserve anything. We never have. But we will earn it, the same way we've earned everything in our history. One failure at a time. One lesson at a time. One stubborn, ridiculous human step at a time. She turned slowly, addressing not just the council, but the recording devices that would carry her words to every corner of the galaxy. We're not the strongest species. We're not the smartest or the fastest or the most advanced. We're just the ones who refuse to stay down when life knocks us over. You can break us. You can hurt us. You can take everything we have and leave us with nothing. Her voice grew stronger, filling the crystal chamber with a power that had nothing to do with volume. But you cannot make us quit. You cannot make us give up. You cannot make us stop trying, stop fighting, stop reaching for something better. That's not stubbornness. That's not foolishness. That's what it means to be human. The chamber was absolutely still. The oldest civilizations in the galaxy sat in silence, confronted by a truth they had never considered. Kethvalan was the first to move. His tendrils began to glow, cycling through colors that the other council members had never seen him display. When he spoke, his voice was different, softer, wondering. In 12,000 years, I have never heard a more compelling argument for the value of any species. He turned to face the other counselors. I call for a vote. The question before us: shall humanity be admitted to full membership in the Galactic Council? One by one, the representatives of the elder races made their decision. The Vorkai voted yes. The crystalline hegemony voted yes. Every species, every civilization, every ancient power that had once looked down on humanity as children playing with fire, they all voted yes. The vote was unanimous. Maya Chen, scarred and exhausted and still healing from a year of impossible survival, became the first human to witness their species joining the rulers of the galaxy. She did not cheer or celebrate. She simply nodded, as if this outcome had never been in doubt, because that was the lesson of humanity. The lesson that the elder races were only beginning to understand. It was not about how rarely you fall. It was about how often you get back up,